guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be doing my August wrap up. I read a total of 13 books in August, which I was obviously really pleased with. And I've done a vlog style wrap up again, so I'll be wrapping them up in that sort of style. I'm not going to be talking about the book swapathon books that I read for that particular readathon. I did a separate vlog and wrap up for that particular set of books, so there were 3 books that I read during that week, so if you haven't watched that yet, I'll link that for you. But the other 10 books I'm going to talk about here, like I said, I had a really good reader month, but I've been off this month, so that's probably what you would expect. Yeah, so I'll insert all of those clips from now. Hi guys, so it is Friday the 3rd of August, and last night I finished Sleepless in Manhattan by Sarah Morgan. This is a romance novel that is the first book in a series. Oh, I can't remember what the series is called. It's something like From Manhattan with Love or something like that. This focuses around 3 girls who are living in New York, they're best friends, and right at the beginning of the book they're working for this sort of like events company, and they lose their jobs basically, and they have to work out what they're going to do. And this particular book focuses mainly around Paige and her relationship with Jake, and yeah, it was really good. I've been craving romance lately and it was exactly what I needed. I've ordered the second book from the library. I got this one from the library as well, and I'm definitely going to be continuing on. Yeah, it's just a great contemporary romance basically, just switch over hands. Yeah, there are some really strong female characters in here. I loved the New York setting. I loved the fact that Paige was so insistent about the fact that she didn't want people to protect her. She has a heart condition, where she was quite ill when she was younger, and a lot of people sort of like were a bit overprotective towards her, so she's very insistent on, you know, don't make decisions for me, don't protect me too much. And I really liked that bit of the book as well. I liked watching the 3 girls start this new business together. That was really interesting. Yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. It's just the pure enjoyment level basically. So yeah, that's the first book that I read in August, and I really enjoyed it. Hi guys, so it is still Friday the 3rd of August. It's in the afternoon, and earlier on today I finished Summer Days and Summer Nights. These are 12 summer romances, and so it's a series of short stories. It's edited by Stephanie Perkins, but it's got obviously loads of different writers in here, like Leigh Bardugo, Lev Grossman, Veronica Roth, that sort of thing. I kind of enjoyed these. I was kind of reading one a day while I was away, and some of them are alright. There's got quite a good lot of diversity in here, so you had like 2 gay characters, then you had in one of the stories, and then in another story you had like some autism rep, which was very good. I mean, I don't know like how like good it is in terms of like is it own voices or whatever, but yeah, I thought the diversity in here was very good, and I think a younger audience would enjoy this. This is obviously YA, so it's not intended for me, and just thought that they were a little bit too young for me overall. So some of the stories I enjoyed in here. I'm just going to look at the contents page. There are a couple that I liked in particular. What did I like? I can't even remember off the top of my head. In 90 Minutes Turn North by Stephanie Perkins is probably my favourite out of here. That was quite a sweet one. Overall I gave it 3 stars. I would probably recommend it to younger readers, but not to readers of my age. I just didn't think there was a lot of substance in it for me. So yeah, there we go. Hi everyone, so it is Sunday the 5th of August and last night I finished Lillian the Octopus by Stephen Rowley. This was quite different from what I was expecting it to be. I'll just put it down. It was April from Getting Hooker With It who recommended that I read this, and I remember she did a video on like cry-worthy books, like books to read if you needed a good cry. So I was sort of expecting one thing and I did kind of get it, but it was a bit different from what I was expecting. So this is about Ted, and he has a dog called Lily. It's a Dutch hound. How do you say that? Dutch hound? I don't know. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. And one day he spots this growth on her head and he calls it her octopus, and it's basically about what happens with this octopus and like the journey and stuff like that. So I think you can imagine ultimately what happens and why it's cry-worthy, but it was quite whimsical and surreal. Like there were a lot of sort of like, well, first of all, the way it was told was like he was having conversations with the dog, so the dog had a voice and she was talking in the novel, which I found quite strange, and at times I understood why the author had made that stylistic choice, and at others I was like, this is, I don't know whether it suits the story. And then oh, there's Stefan in the background, look. Move it that way. And then there were these bits in the middle where where it kind of went off on like a massive tangent where, yeah, it really got a bit surreal. And again, I understood why those bits were in there, but I found them really strange. I don't know, I thought the book overall was really clever. I liked his writing style, though I found it strange at the same time. And I liked the commentary that he had in there on, like, because Ted was gay, and so he talked a lot about being gay, but about relationships and things like that. So the commentary on that was really good. And then, like, there was a lot of commentary on there on like what love is and the different forms of love, and you know, having a pet and things like that. And you could really relate to that. So it's definitely a book to read if you do want to cry. I only cried once in it, but when I did cry, I really cried. Yeah, and ultimately I thought it was really good, so I gave it 4.5 stars. Hi guys, so it is Thursday the 7th of August, and yesterday I finished 2 books. So the first book that I finished was the audiobook that I was listening to. I downloaded this from my library, and it's called A False Report, and it's by Ken Armstrong and T. Christian Miller, I think. I'll put a picture of it up on the screen here. This is basically about, well, it's 2 stories kind of meshed into one. So it's about this girl called Marie, firstly, who was raped, and she reported the rape, and later on she retracted her statement twice and said that she'd been lying. And then it's also, the other story is about this sort of serial rapist who is working out of several different towns in a state in America which I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment. And it's about sort of like the investigation into, you know, who this serial rapist is, and, you know, tracking him down and stuff like that. I actually listened to this with Stefan, so we started listening, well, yeah, we started listening to it in the car on the way to the airport, and then we've been listening to it each evening as we've been getting ready to go out, which has been really, really nice actually. What I particularly liked about this book was that it went into some of the history of prejudices towards women when it came to reporting crimes, especially rape, and where those prejudices have come from. I found that really, really interesting, and I found it fascinating hearing about the investigation and how they tracked this man down. But we also got to hear from his perspective, so they did various different interviews with him and talked a lot about his life, kind of what motivated him to commit these rapes and things like that. And again, I found it really interesting hearing from his perspective, because it's kind of like car crash TV, isn't it? You know, he's this really evil man, but at the same time you're compelled to kind of find out what makes his brain work and stuff like that. It's a really cool sort of weird thing, but I found it really fascinating. I said to my husband yesterday when we finished it, well, what are we going to rate it? And it's quite a hard book to rate, just because obviously it's telling the truth. But I gave it 5 stars in the end, just because I was thinking about what would I change about it, and I wouldn't really change anything. And I think I learned a lot from it. It was really interesting, and I would highly recommend it. The audiobook was really good. It was narrated by a woman, and then at the end of the book you had the 2 authors come in and say a few things. So it was a really good audiobook. I would definitely recommend listening to it. I'm not sure obviously what the reading experience is like, but yeah, I've really enjoyed that one. And then last night before I went to bed, I finished The Keeper of Lost Things, and this is by Ruth Hogan. This was recommended to me by Dave from Wild Reads as part of my BookTuber Recommends project. And this is basically about a woman called Laura who goes to work for a man called Anthony in this house, and she's kind of like his assistant, and she kind of like types stuff up for him, and then she looks after the house and stuff like that. And there's this room in the house called his study that he doesn't let anybody into. He goes in there, but it's locked for the rest of the time. And then he passes away, and he leaves the house to Laura, and he basically says that this room is full of lost things, and that it's her task to give them back to their owners. I found it really clever. I liked the way that the story was plotted out. There were lots and lots of connections that you were making towards the end of the book, which was really lovely to see. I thought the characters were really well developed and really well fleshed out, and there were some really lovely characters in here, like Sunshine is just such a lovely character basically. So again, great book. It's quite short, it's about 300 pages, so it took me a couple of days to read this. Again, would highly recommend this one if you're into contemporary but also like mystery kind of books. Little bit of historical fiction, I suppose. Would definitely recommend this one, and again, I couldn't give this anything else but 5 stars. Hi guys, so it is Friday the 10th of August. It's our last full day in Cyprus today, and so we're going to make the most of it by the pool and things like that. But yesterday I finished The Husband's Secret by Liane Moriarty, and this is a contemporary fiction book, and it follows a number of different perspectives. So you get a character called Cecilia who discovers this letter that she's found it in the loft, and it says on the front, "To my wife, to open in the event of my death." And part of the story is about whether she opens this letter or not and the consequences of that. We're also following a character called Rachel, whose daughter was murdered when she was 17. We're also following a character called Tess. I think it's just those 3 perspectives. Yeah, it's set in Sydney in Australia. I believe Liane Moriarty is Australian, so I quite like the fact that it's set in Australia. Yeah, and it's just about these 3 women's stories basically. I read Big Little Lies last year and absolutely loved it. I think I still really like her writing style, and I will continue to read books by her. This wasn't quite as good as Big Little Lies, but it was still really compelling and really readable, and I thought it dealt with some really interesting issues, just like Big Little Lies did. So this is like a 400-page book, and I read it in about 2.5 days, so really good. Would definitely recommend it, and I gave it 4 stars. Hi guys, so it is Monday the 13th of August. We're back from holiday, so we arrived back on like Saturday night. We didn't land until like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So yeah, stayed over at a hotel that night and then drove home on Sunday morning. And yeah, I thought I would give you a quick update on a couple of things that I've read since I spoke to you last. So on the flight home, I finished Educated by Tara Westover. This is a very recent non-fiction release, and I'd read about 100 pages of it on the Friday before we came home, which was what, like the 11th, and then basically finished this on the Saturday. I read about another 100 pages during the day, and then, or maybe about 50 pages during the day, and then basically I read this on the plane, finished it off on the plane on the way home, and this was absolutely fantastic. So this has been talked about a lot on BookTube, but in case you're not aware, this is, like I said, a non-fiction book about Tara's life growing up in Idaho. Did she grow up in Idaho? I'm going to have to check now, hold on. Yeah, Idaho. Yeah, Idaho. Okay, I don't know why I doubt myself, but you know, like when you do. So anyway, it's about her life growing up as a child in Idaho. She comes from a Mormon family, and her dad, while she was growing up, believed in something called the end of days. And basically he believed that one day something would happen on Earth which, you know, wiped most of the population out, or meant that it was going to be really hard to survive because you wouldn't get any, you know, there'd be nothing to eat or drink, or do you know what I mean, like that sort of idea. So he made family stockpile food, and he did various other bits and pieces, but they were a very strict Mormon family. So he believed in things that were, maybe you could say, above and beyond normal Mormonism. I don't really know enough about it in order to make that kind of statement, but I think you can kind of see where I'm coming from. Tara came from quite a big family, so I think she had something like 5 brothers and a sister or something like that. She was the youngest of the family. The children never went to school, so I think the eldest couple of brothers went to school, and then her dad decided one day to pull them out. But the youngest children never went to school, and they didn't believe in going to the doctors or to the hospital if something was wrong with them. They were treated at home. Yeah, there was this sort of belief that, of certainly being driven by her dad, that, you know, going to school was the work of the devil. Sort of, they were going to be taught things that went completely against all of the ideals that they were being taught at home. They believed things like if you went to the doctors, then they would do things to kill you more than cure you, that sort of idea. So it's about her life growing up in this family, and it's pretty grim and brutal at times. I was quite surprised actually how many times I felt on the brink of tears, but also I felt really disgusted by some of the things that were going on. And I hesitate to use the phrase breaking out. It's not about her breaking out of her family and going to school. It's because breaking out's the wrong sort of word, or phrase I should say, but it's basically about her growing curiosity about the world and learning more about herself, more about her surroundings, about the wider world, and learning to, you know, learning what her capabilities were basically. And it was just absolutely fantastic, really, really good. It's a page turner. Like I said, I read it so quickly, couldn't put it down. This is the sort of non-fiction book that I would recommend if you're not really into non-fiction, and you're looking maybe to get into the genre, or you're just looking for your next great read basically, but you're a bit sort of hesitant about non-fiction. I would definitely recommend this. Yeah, I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I gave it 5 stars. I think this is a bit of a better angle, although it looks like something sticking out of my head. That's my tripod, but anyway, yeah, I think the light is slightly better in this one. I don't know, my face looks a little bit shiny, but there we go. You don't really need to hear that. And then this morning I finished another non-fiction book, and that is Mary Beard's Women and Power, a manifesto. And this is 2 lectures that she gave at the British Museum, I think, or was it the British Library? One of the two. And it was for the London Review of Books lecture series that they were doing, and both of them are obviously about women in power, and they're called, hold on, The Public Voice of Women and Women in Power. And so obviously you can kind of gather what she's talking about in this one. What I particularly liked about these, we'll call them lectures, essays, let's just call them essays for the sake of this clip, is that she references a lot of classical literature and stories when she's talking about where some of these ideas and stereotypes have come from when it comes to women in power. And of course Mary Beard is, that's her sort of like, what should we say, like topic of expertise. She's like a lecturer in, I really should look these things up. I read it this morning and then I just can't remember off the top of my head. So she is a Professor of Classics at Newnham College in Cambridge. So she wrote SQPR, I think it is, or VR, which is like a book all about the Romans basically. So she talks about classic literature and art and things like that, and how some of the ideas about women in power, that, you know, where they originated from, and then she talks about how that has been exacerbated over time, or how it has died down over time, but mostly how it's been sort of followed on and exacerbated. And she gives various examples of things that are currently happening. Like she talks about Trump and Hillary Clinton. She talks about Theresa May in here, and then, you know, things that happen on Twitter and things like that. And I found these essays really interesting and thought-provoking. It certainly made me think about how I perceive particular opinions that are put across in the media, and ways that people approach women in particular situations. So yeah, so for example, she talked about the politician Diane Abbott in here, and there was a particular occasion where she was giving this interview, I think on radio, and she got some of her figures wrong when it came to how much money they needed for in order to pump into the police, or something kind of along those lines. What the media failed to really mention, or it was really hushed down, is that there was also another politician in the room that was being interviewed at the same time. It was another guy, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he also made a complete fool of himself with you know, getting a load of stuff wrong and stuff, but the media obviously went to town on Diane Abbott and talked about how stupid she was, and just kind of had a bit of a chuckle at the other guys, oh, you know, you got it wrong sort of thing, and that was all that was really said about that. And you sort of can see how, because she was a woman and because she's in the world of politics, you know, if you get something wrong, you know, we're only human, we get things wrong all the time, but if you get something wrong, you're vilified for it, basically. Yeah. It just made me think also about my own role, my own job, and how, you know, interact with men on a daily basis. And I would hope that in a career like teaching, you know, these sorts of stereotypes and opinions are considered a bit more, you know, because it is a profession. But then, you know, so a politician, you know, that's a profession. But it did make me think a little bit more about the way I go about things, and the way that other people interact with me, and how I might respond to that in the future. Yeah, it made me ponder a lot of stuff. I gave this 5 stars. I think this is a fantastic starting point if you want to read a little bit more about feminism or the position of women in society today, the history of where that's come from, that sort of thing. Really readable. There's nothing too academic about these essays at all. Yeah, really good starting point. Gave it 5 stars, would really recommend it. Hi guys, so it is Tuesday I think it's the 14th of August, that's right, and last night I finished a book on my Kindle called Romancing the Duke, and this is by Tessa Dare. So this is a historical romance novel. I've never read historical romance before, so I had a few Tessa Dare books on my Kindle from kind of where they come up on like Kindle like monthly deals or whatever. So yeah, I was kind of flicking through my Kindle in the last sort of few days of when we were on holiday, and I thought I'd try this one out. So, God, I can't for the life of me remember what the names of the 2 main characters are. Just bear with me for a second. Okay, so I just set my Goodreads. So this tells the story of a woman called Izzy Goodnight, and she has just received a letter to say that she needs to go to this castle in Northumberland because she's going to receive something when she's there, and she's really down on her luck. Her father has recently passed away. She doesn't have anywhere to live. She doesn't have any money or any way of supporting herself. So although she doesn't know what she's going to receive, she sort of goes there as a bit of a, well, I've got nothing to lose kind of thing. And when she arrives, there's obviously the guy who wrote her the letter says he's going to meet her there. He's not there when she arrives, and out of the castle comes the Duke of the castle, and I think he's the Duke of Rothbury, and he's named Ransom. And yeah, the 2 of them meet, and he doesn't really know why she's there, he doesn't want her there, that sort of thing. And anyway, in the first couple of pages it turns out that you learn that she has inherited this castle, and Ransom's kind of like, well, hold on a second, this is my castle, I don't understand how you can have inherited it because it's mine. And the story goes from there, and it's obviously about their romance. And like I said, I've never read a historical fiction book before. I've always been put off them in the past, and I don't really know the reason why. I can't really put my finger on why I've been put off of them, but I thought this was really good. You don't really get an accurate picture of what sort of historical time period we're talking about, because there are a couple of references to objects that seem quite modern. So, you know, the cover and the sort of story would suggest it's kind of like maybe like 18th or 19th century, but some of the references in there kind of, like I said, are a bit more modern, and so it makes it seem like it's a bit more modern, but I don't really know about that. This was really steamy, so if you like your romance to be steamy, then I would definitely try out Tessa Dare. She knows how to write a good steamy scene. But I also just really enjoyed the storyline, and I enjoyed following the characters. So yeah, I did really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to be reading more from Tessa Dare. I've got a couple more of her books on my Kindle, and I am looking forward to trying out just some more romance, historical romance in general. So I have a book out from the library, I think called The Duke and I was a bit hesitant about. I'm not so hesitant now. I'm looking forward to reading that a little bit more now. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this and I gave it 4 stars. Hi guys, it is Sunday the 20th, I think, of August, and yesterday evening I finished The Kiss Quotient, and this is by Helen Huang. I don't know how you pronounce that, but anyway, I read this on my Kindle. It's a book that lots of people have been talking about recently, and I managed, I think, to get it for cheap on like a Kindle deal. So I was sort of flicking through my Kindle the other day and thinking, what should I read next on here? And I thought I'd go for some contemporary romance. So this is basically the story of Stella and Michael. And Stella is on the autistic spectrum, and she decides one day that she's going to hire an escort to teach her how to have sex and be in a relationship. And the escort that she hires is Michael, and basically Michael agrees to do this, and so they start sort of like this arrangement, I suppose, where he's sort of teaching her how to do it, as it were, and yeah, how to be in a relationship basically, and they basically fall for each other. I thought this was really good. It's really steamy. I heard Krista talk about this on her channel, I think in her July wrap up, and she said it was a bit too steamy for her. It is really quite steamy, so if that's not really your thing, then you might find this a bit too much, but I really enjoyed that. I really like the diversity in here as well. It was interesting reading from a female perspective when it comes to autism. So I think we don't often get to see that kind of side of it, and it is own voices because the author is on the autistic spectrum as well, and her daughter is too, so it's interesting from that point of view. Then you had Michael. He is half Vietnamese, I think, so you kind of get that aspect of it as well. Set in San Francisco. Yeah, it was just a really good time basically, and I gave that 4.5 stars. So there you go guys, they were all of the books that I read in August. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. Have you read any of these? What did you think of them? And what were some of the books that you read in August? Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.